Welcome to the Jim Bottrell Experience, powered by the San Diego Union Tribune Custom Podcast. This is our very first show, and of course we have to have the number one real estate agent in San Diego with us today, Jim Bottrell.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being a part of this. And there's so much fear and challenges going on in the real estate market, especially in San Diego right now. And I have a set of questions that people have sent that they would like you to answer, if that's okay.
Okay, let's go.
First of all, thank you for your service.
Oh, thanks for paying for it. You know what? I spent a lot of your money in Iraq. I'm not kidding. I always say that. It's a little bit of a joke, but I'm actually very serious when people say thank you for the service. But honestly, one of the big advantages that we had over there when I was in the initial invasion back in 2003 as a young company commander, that cost wasn't a concern for us. We had whatever we wanted. We had. If I needed air, if I needed rotors, if I needed artillery, I needed mortars, whatever it was, we had it at our disposal. And that is thanks to everything's been put together. People have gone before us, but also the American taxpayers. They paid for all of that. That's why we're able to bring so many guys home.
Well, you're very humble, and your reputation, I heard about you throughout San Diego for a while, and I bumped into you once or twice.
Yeah, down at KUSI.
Yeah, KUSI. Yeah. And you're doing great things, and I appreciate working with you. This is going to be fun, and I think we're going to help a lot of people.
This is going to be a great time.
So one question that came up was, so we're seeing a lot of reports that the housing prices in San Diego have come down 100,000, maybe more, since that question probably came out, right?
Yeah.
What are you seeing going on right now with the way the world is and the way the mortgage rates are?
Well, that's many questions in that. So the first one, let's talk about why prices, they went up quite a bit. Mm-hmm. Huge run, 131 consecutive months in a row they went up. They went up, a lot of it was because, just we didn't have enough structures. We went up because interest rates went down. That I think we're going to show you guys a chart later on, why that impacts. But in the beginning of 2022, we ran up about 17% in just the first 5 months. And it had everything to do with the fact there weren't many houses for sale. So you had a lot of buyers out there. Interest rates were still low. So the prices shot up, and it was ridiculous. I mean, we were getting 70, 80 offers on houses, selling them $120,000, $160,000 over ask. You have cash buyers offering $100,000 over ask and not even being on the podium. Like, they're not even in third place. It was a little ridiculous. And then the Fed finally showed up to the party. I mean, I think we all know they were pretty much asleep at the switch on that one. Fed finally showed up at the party, and they just started increasing interest rates dramatically, almost like 5%. In just a short period of time. And that scared all the buyers away. And so then the market just turned and went right back down about 17, maybe even 20% from the highs. Now, we finished 2022 at almost the same spot where we started 2022. So you were still okay. It wasn't too bad. But as interest rates have continued to go up, that's been putting more downward pressure on houses, because when somebody looks to, when they want to buy a house, one of the first things they do is they go and talk to a lender. And the lender will take all their financials, and the lender will crunch the numbers and say, okay, go buy a house for X dollars. But that's not really what that lender's doing. What the lender's doing is they're calculating a payment. What payment does this person qualify for? And then they're reverse engineering that payment using the day's interest, like the current interest rates, to then come up with a price, because houses are listed by a price, not a payment. And so as interest rates went up, that put what people could buy, push it down. And then you start seeing prices go down, you see interest rates go up, and the buyers kind of scattered. And that's what caused the housing prices to go down. Since then, we have seen, and this isn't any of the statistics yet, so I'm telling you ahead of time, and I mentioned it on KUSI about a month and a half ago, and I got tons of hate mail, but guess what?
Really?
I was right. Oh, yeah, people throw things at me all the time. Because I got to tell you, I don't talk about the statistics. I say, this is what I see. I mean, remember, I run a real estate team. I'm a realtor. I see what is happening today. All right, not what's happening in the statistics, the Case-Shiller Index. I don't care, because that's a 90-day running average of closed escrows. That tells me what happened in transactions 4 months ago, right? Because it's the time when the buyer and the seller come together and they make that figurative handshake and say, this is what I'll pay for the house. That's the market right then, that moment in time. But that isn't really going to show up in those stats for another 60 to 120 days. And so while you're seeing those articles right now, which I'm guessing is a question to come, is why are we seeing the stats going down? And here I'm saying prices are going up. They are going up today. Month over month, they're going up. But we have interest rates have stabilized. And we have even come down a little bit. which is surprising. I think it has a lot to do with the Silicon Valley Bank and all of that stuff has brought the prices down, even though the Fed went up a little bit. I think that has something to do with it. But that has, there's a lot of buyers in the market, and every time interest rates go down 1 full percent, that brings nationally 5 million new buyers into the market.
Wow.
5 million new buyers every time interest rates come down 1%. The problem is we don't have, we have a massive housing shortage. We don't have enough structures. To begin with.
And there's a demand.
Yeah, we don't have enough structures for one, but think about all those sellers, or think about all those owners that are sitting on an interest rate that starts with a 2. Are they giving that up? They are not giving that up. As I jokingly say, they're dug in like an Alabama tick. Right, they are not going anywhere. I knew it'd make you laugh on that one.
I haven't heard that in a while.
I've said it on TV a couple of times. That they're not selling. So normally they would sell. They'd say, hey, we want to upsize, we want to downsize, but they don't want to give up that 2.5% interest rate because that's not replaceable because you're not going to get it again.
How long do you think it'll be before we see that?
End of time.
Really?
Yeah, we'll never see that again. And there's a whole bunch of demographics go into it, and I'd love to talk to you about that as to why interest rates are going to do what they're going to do. But I lost my train of thought on that one.
No, we're talking about how dug in like a
Alabama take. That's right. So those people that are just simply not going to give up that super low interest rate. And we run into a lot of sellers nowadays that want to have a consultation. So we'll show up and they say, okay, I've got this house that's a $800,000 house. I'd like to upsize or downsize, but I don't want my payment to increase. That's not going to happen because the prevailing rate today is, I'm seeing, I can't quote rates because I'm not a lender, but I'm seeing a lot of rates at the low 6s and the very, very high 5s. You can't take a 2.5% interest rate and then go buy a house in the high 5s, low 6s and expect your payment not to go up. So then it comes down to a really solid of why do you need to sell? So the only people that are selling nowadays are the death, divorce, diamonds, added kids, displacement, move jobs, something like that. Or as I jokingly say, GTFO California, because there's a lot of those.
Explain what that is.
Well, I don't think I can cuss on here, but it's get the F out of California. That is 81% of my sellers in the last 2 years of all the listings we've done, 81% have been people leaving California. They are done with it.
So with 81% leaving, what's the percentage that wants to be in San Diego?
Well, people love San Diego. San Diego's awesome. But I will say in the last 2 years, I've had one buyer moving to California from out of state. And we've had several hundred leaving California. But San Diego, I love San Diego. San Diego's awesome. I've been actually an Orange County guy. When I was a young Marine, when I was a senior first lieutenant, picked up captain, went down to MCD San Diego, was a series commander down there for 5 cycles, company commander for 4 cycles. It was the best job I've ever had in my life. I absolutely loved that job. I had so much fun with that every day. Good.
What's the similarities between being in the Marines and running a team and running a real estate team?
It's funny. It's not that different.
Really?
Yeah, it's not that different. People, I get that question once in a while. I had no idea you're going to ask me that. But the thing is when you are a company commander in the Marine Corps, and I don't know if you know what that is, but let me explain it really quick. Most people don't know what that is.
Okay.
You've seen Forrest Gump, right?
Of course.
You remember Lieutenant Dan?
Of course.
Okay. Well, I was Lieutenant Jim. All
okay.
Right. Lieutenant Dan had 30 to 50 guys. I had my 30 to 50 guys. Then when I became Captain Jim, now I have 4 Lieutenant Dan. So you now have 4 platoons. You have 3 platoons plus a weapons platoon, whatever it is. That is what I was. And so what you're doing in the Marine Corps is you have people and processes for a product. So it's a people's game, both businesses. But in the Marine Corps, you got to take care of your Marines. There's a process, all right? You have to go through everything to have, a product or a result. Doing the same thing in running a real estate team. I have people. It's a people industry. We go through processes for a product, which is our clients to help them buy or sell houses. The main difference today is that nobody's getting shot at.
Yet.
Yeah, so people, I get asked a lot. Yeah, yet. I get asked a lot. It's like, how do you stay so calm when all things are happening? And it's like nobody's going to die today.
That's the first thing that I noticed when we talked. You're very calm. You're very clear.
I'm always very calm.
Well, and buying a property is one of the most important things in a person's life.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
And they're not calm. So Well, they're not, you probably
No, they're not.
no because so you come into this situation. You're very calm, very confident, and you probably walk and talk them through the fears that they have. Correct?
100%. That's why even when I was a new agent, I was very successful. One, I mean, I've been in. I've owned rental properties forever. I'm a homeowner at a very early age, and so I know what they're going through. But it's just being able to talk to them, have a calm, soothing voice. But one of the biggest things really is I would always tell them, this is what's going to happen, and this is why it's going to happen. I could always tell them and just explain it to them, manage the expectations. But this is what's going to happen, and this is why it's going to happen. Whereas I want to say a lot of the other agents out there are wondering what the hell just happened. And that's the big difference. And I actually didn't make that up. I actually had a client that I picked up once after he fired his previous agent. And when we were in escrow, near the end of close of escrow, he says, Jim, what the big difference with you is you were always telling me what's going to happen and why. And the other agent was always wondering what the hell just happened. So
you're kind of you're the messenger.
Well, you're a messenger, you're a conductor, choreographer. I mean, you're everything in real estate. You're, I make a joke. When I'd be selling houses, I'm in charge of the marketing, I'm in charge of the processes. So I'm the finance guy, but I'm also the psychological counselor. I'm also sometimes the marriage counselor. Wow. Wow. It's a joke. We kind of have to. It's a joke, but yeah, I mean, seriously, when they're buying and selling houses, you watch, Mr. and Mrs. Smith become Mr. and Mrs. Bickerson, and it happens. So you just got to manage the stuff. But I mean, I've done thousands of transactions now. There's nothing that I'm going to see that I haven't seen before a whole bunch of times.
So when did you realize that you wanted to be a real estate agent and have your own firm?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. So when I was very young, my dad was a police officer, LAPD. He worked graveyard, rode motorcycles, graveyards forever. But during the day, so he was gone all night, but during the day, he bought and sold houses, had a real estate license. He was kind of a flipper before that was ever a term. And this is, in the late 70s and the early 80s. He did that. And then so I would help him. I'd go and learn stuff, and then he would buy houses. And this is, one of the most formative things for me ever is back then offers to buy a house, sell a house, they're all done in person. There was no email, there were no faxes, none of that stuff existed. So you went and you did it in person. So there was times, so when I was very young, my grandmother, my dad's mother passed away, and I got an inheritance of $4,000. And this is like 1978. So my dad asked me once, he says, I'm going to buy a property. If you want to be like 8 or 9. He says,
You're 8 or 9 years old?
Yeah, and he says, if you want to be involved in this, you can put your money into this. And, don't worry, but you're going to be a part of it if you want to do this. And I said, well, yeah, my dad was my hero. Still is. He's still my best friend. He's been the best man in both my weddings. And we talk every day. And
that's a very unique, and you're very blessed.
Oh, absolutely. He's a great man. Love him to death. So anyway, we would go and he'd make these offers on houses, and he would bring me, at this very young age, he'd bring me. And then I remember once somebody was saying, why'd you bring your kid? And he said, my dad looked at him and said, his money's in this. He gets to be here. He's not going to say anything, but he gets to watch. I'm like, oh, cool. And then we get in the car, and this is, I have a couple recurring best memories of me and my dad is one, fishing, because he taught me how to fish since I was about that tall. And two is after we do those things, we get in the car and you basically give me the debrief. So, and you'd have all these sales terms, and he goes, okay, now this is where I did a level shift on them. And this is what I did. I put them on the roof, and all these different sales techniques that he used that he just learned. I don't know where he learned them. To this day, I don't know where he learned them, but that was fun stuff. So I thought that was a lot of fun to do that. And then after, like when I was a young Marine, I bought my first house. I owned it for 2 years. And what's funny is I had a rent of $825 a month. And then when I bought that first house, the mortgage payment was $2,600 a month. Talk about payment shock. All right. And this is 1999, 1998. And so it was hard. I was scared, and I tried to back out of it. I tried to jump off the cliff a few times, and my dad was always like, no, get back. You're fine. You're fine. Don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. Convinced me. But I owned that house for 2 years. And if you add up that 24 mortgage payments I made at $2,600 a month, it's about $62,000. And after that, at the end of it, when I sold it after 2 years, I got a check from escrow for $80,000. Think about it. I got all my mortgage payments back, plus 18 grand tax free. So I'm thinking, I kind of like this real estate thing. Like I'm making more money doing this than I'm going to work every day and making, passively. So I realized that if you own a home, you live for free, right? If you rent a home, you don't. You never get that back. Think about being a renter you're a great renter for 3, 4, 5 years, pay your rent on time, take care of things. And at the end of it, say, hey, we're going to move out. Can I get all that money back? How's that going to work out for you? Hey, can I get some tax benefits? You're not going to get any of that stuff as a renter. So way back when, my wife and I realized that we were not investing in our own future. We were investing in our landlord's future every single month. So we bit the bullet and tripled our monthly payment. But when we sold that house is when I realized, holy crap, this thing is awesome. I love this. I said, we need to do more of this. So what I did with that $80,000 is I bought 3 houses. I bought one that we moved into, and we bought 2 rental properties that I still have them.
You still have them?
Absolutely. Yeah, and it just gets better every single year because the mortgage payment's the same, right?
Right.
It never changes, fixed.
You're locked in.
But then every year rents do what? They go up. So every single year it makes more money than it did last year.
Well, you're an inspiration for a lot of reasons, and God bless your father.
Yeah.
Because he was a phenomenal mentor, and the values that he instilled in you, you've become that, and that's why people like working with you. You have integrity.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I mean, it comes across.
I always
and
do
an
exactly what
honesty.
I'm gonna do.
There's an honesty about you. So we have another question. Why are we seeing home prices? We actually I asked you this. They'll never get back. You said.
The 2.5%.
We'll never see that again.
Yeah, I think the world has kind of ended if we get back to that. I mean, let's talk about why they got to 2.5%.
Okay.
Right. I think that's a great lesson. Okay, so this has to do with demographics. There's a number of things that all happened at once. One, you have the U.S. government was buying mortgage-backed securities. So banks would loan out the money. They have a finite amount of money. They'd loan out to somebody. But then the government was coming in and buying that loan from them immediately, so they got their money back. All right, well, if they don't have a finite amount of money anymore, now they don't have to have such a high price for it, right? It just keeps going over and over and over. All right, COVID was something where the government said we need to keep the economy going, so let's dump the interest rates. But the biggest thing is, as everything, and I'm gonna a guy that I follow a lot. His name is Peter Zeihan. I don't know if you've ever heard of him or not, but he's a very interesting guy, and I kind of geek out on the economic stuff. So literally in the mornings, I will, as I do my workout, I have on the like economics guys talking about stuff. I totally geek out. I'm such a weirdo, but anyway, I love it.
Well, it's knowledge, and
yeah.
You're keeping up with what's going on.
Yeah, I love to know the why of everything that happened. For me, just something happens and like, okay, how does it work? Like I'm the kid who would take stuff apart. How does it work? I want to know this. So anyway, for me, I live in an economics world, maybe real estate, but it is economics.
Sure.
I like to know the why. So it has everything to do with the population density. So you have the baby boomers, one of the largest generations we've ever had, right? Once somebody hits, well, let's just go through it. So from 25 to about 50, they're making money, they have kids, they're consuming a lot, and they have a lot of expenses. So when they're buying cars, they're buying houses, they're doing everything. Those are the consumers. But once you hit 50, your kids generally move out. Unless, of course, you're Jim Bottrell, because I have a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old. Yeah. But your kids move out. But now between 50 and 65, you're making the most amount of money you'll ever make. Because now you're making money hand over fist, right? But your expenses have gone way down. House should be paid down by now. Not off, but down. It's an old mortgage, been in the house for a long time. So your expenses drop off the shelf, but you're making more money than you ever have. But you think, holy crap, I don't have anything for retirement. Because you haven't been spending on your kids and cars and on college and all that other stuff. So now you have low expenses, high income, and you are investing as fast as you can into whatever investment you can have. Well, all the baby boomers are doing this at the same time. And that's been the last 15 years. So they're putting tons and tons of money into investments, but our baby boomers have been 70% of global capital of the baby boomer generation. So they put tons and tons of money investing. So now all of a sudden, if you go through those three things, you had the baby boomers investing massive amounts of money, huge population, not just the United States, the entire planet, right? Investing huge amounts of money that other people then borrow. You had COVID, so the government artificially putting interest rates low. And then you had mortgage-backed securities, so the banks could just lend over and over and over. Well, all three of those are gone because they don't buy mortgage-backed securities anymore. COVID's over. right? And the baby boomers, guess what happened this quarter? The biggest chunk of them turned 65 and retired this quarter. So what happens when somebody retires? That day you retire is the richest you're ever going to be, right? But now they're older to where they don't have time to recover that money anymore. If something happens, they lose it in the stock market or it takes a hit or something like that, they don't have time to recover anymore. So now they pull all that money out and they put it in very, very safe investments. Cash, safe money, T-bills, bonds, whatever it is. But now that money isn't available on the global market anymore. So now you have a constriction of the money supply, right? All right, so now you've got that constriction of the money supply. Now the next generation behind that would normally, pick up and carry on, well, it's Gen Xers, right? Problem is we're a tiny generation. There's not many of us. And while we're doing fine and we're hard workers, there's just not enough of us to make up for that massive amount of global capital. The next generation behind us that actually has the numbers to do it are the millennials.
We've heard a lot of things about millennials.
Yeah, so look, everything hinges on the millennials now. It's like the scariest thing.
They're actually very intelligent.
Oh, they're
very tech savvy.
Yeah. But they're 15 years away from hitting that 50-year mark, and they have done everything late. They were late to move out of their house. They were late to buy. They were late to move out of their parents' house. They were late to buy houses, and they were late to have kids. So we would have to assume that if they do everything on time with everyone else, we have 15 years before the baby boomer, that generation big enough to actually pick up and carry on what the baby boomers did. I'm sorry, the millennials before they pick up. So we have another 10 to 15 years where there's not going to be a huge money supply. So I have predicted this, that mortgage interest rates are going to go to 9. Now they're not going to do it this year. But in 2024, because I think we're going to have a recession this year. Third quarter, fourth quarter, probably first quarter of next year, we'll be in a recession. The Fed will drop the rates some, but housing prices will be up the whole time. But after that's over, when the economy's going again, we're going to see 9%. And I even heard a guy yesterday saying he predicts 10%.
When do you think the economy will get rolling again, the way you're talking about? 2025?
No. I mean, it'll start going in mid 2024.
Okay.
We're going to have a tough time coming up. We've just done too many things.
But either way, it's always a good time to buy a house in San Diego, especially.
Well, I'm a huge fan of always owning a house.
Right.
I hate renting. I detest it. I think it's there's a period of time when people have to rent. Like when you're young, you first move out.
Right.
You don't have a choice. I get it. But you got to get out of that as soon as possible, because what you're doing every single month when you're paying rent, you're investing in someone else's retirement. You get no tax benefit out of it. You get none of the appreciation. You get none of the depreciation. You don't get any of the things in it. And you certainly don't get your money back when you moved out. But when you own a home, so when I always say is, when you own a home, you live in your own home basically for free, because you end up getting that money back over time with appreciation. Right. But when you rent a home and you're paying to live in someone else's home. So it just doesn't make sense to me.
So if people want to get a hold of you, the information is at the bottom of the screen, your website, and we're going to be talking about other things on other shows that we're going to be working on, which I'm ecstatic about, because there are a lot of fears and a lot of things are changing quick. Mm-hmm. This has been a great interview.
Oh, I've enjoyed it. Has it been that long already? We're already getting the hook.
No, we're not getting the hook.
Like we've been here for 3 minutes.
We've got more. It's because you're passionate, and it did go very quick. Thank you for what you're doing. And again, everybody, you have the information there at the bottom of the screen. Jim is the guy in San Diego. If you want to know, he is an expert for the San Diego Union Tribune for the podcast and what he's doing. We could not ask for a better guy.
I appreciate that.
Thank you so much for being on.
All right. Thank you.
Everybody take care.